Hey, welcome to another episode of the Fit Growth Machine podcast. I'm Brian Rosenthal, your host, and today I'm going to interview Kendall. He has deep experience across analytics, technology, and strategy in senior executive roles with leading companies including Under Armour, Glaxo-Smith-Kline, and most recently, Publishers Clearinghouse. He's passionate about driving business growth and transformation at the intersection of digital data and the consumer. But before talking to him, let me tell you that this episode is brought to you by BSR Digital. At BSR Digital, we help e-commerce brands that want to scale the business to the next level through Facebook, Instagram, and Google Ads. Yes, even after the iOS 14 update, now more than ever, we need to understand that it's really important to level up the marketing and design a solid strategy, as what used to work doesn't anymore. And we are going to cover that with Kurt in a minute. So if your e-commerce brand lacks a solid plan and professional team to increase sales, we can help the same way we have helped more than 1,000 brands like yours for over a decade. To learn more, you can visit us at bsrdigital.com, or you can also email us at hello@bsrdigital.com. Now, as promised, I have Kurt here with me. Thanks, man, for being on the show.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. I would love to give a shout out to Miriam Kendall for making the intro. She's great. So thank you, Miriam, if you're listening. So yeah, please tell me, what's your story? I would love to know more about it.
Yeah, so I've had the huge fortune from a career standpoint to really have entered the workforce after graduate school when really the whole concept of digital really got its start. So beginning of 2000, when all the world was changing, there was this bubble that was there briefly, but then really wasn't a bubble if you think about what's happened in the subsequent time. And throughout that period since then till now, have been on the client service side, and then in recent years on the client side, now at Publishers Clearinghouse Chief Analytics Officer, helping companies with their digital transformation agenda. Early on, that was much more in this business application in the areas of marketing, business strategy. Over time, that evolved into what is now the hot space of AI, ML. A decade ago, it was big data. But it was all the concept of in a digital world, technology is at the foundation. We refer to that as digital, but translating all of those technologies to actual business results. How do you make that happen? How do you make it from a business process standpoint? How do you make it from a technology standpoint? How do you make it happen from a data science standpoint? And most importantly, how do you make that happen from a people standpoint? How do you change organizations from a culture standpoint so that they are digital first, digital native, but leveraging all of those technologies? And these days I come at it very much with the lens of using all of that data around creating those ML and AI algorithms, but also creating the capabilities that organizations utilize to operate more effectively in a digital world.
Awesome. I mean, the role Chief Analytics Officer sounds really exciting, but I'm sure many people listening don't know what that's about. So could you please do a quick description of what a Chief Analytics Officer does?
Sure. So in practice, there are three major areas that as a Chief Analytics or a Head of Analytics that you'll have responsibilities for. The first is in the area of what I'll describe as business analytics. This may be providing the analytics services, the quantitative analysis that might support your marketing decisions. So how to allocate your brand marketing dollars, how to make decisions around where to target your search to advertising dollars, who to send an email to. That's all the marketing space. Done a lot of work in the areas around pricing. So what should be the appropriate price? What's the promotional effort? But it can also extend further into the organization into, a consumer company, into areas like supply chain, which is a pretty hot topic over the last 3 years. But how do you use data and analysis to make better decisions in the data analytics? So this business analytics is one of the major areas of responsibility and business impact for someone who leads analytics. The second one, I think, is the one that most people think about a lot of times, or they think that that's part of analytics, is in the data science. So bringing advanced mathematical skills, approaches, processes these days technologies to be able to analyze data in a way that you can't just with just an Excel spreadsheet. And especially in the last 3-4 years, taking advantage of the computational abilities that's available in cloud computing, that's available in this open source software tools that are out there, to be able to bring smarter, more automated ways to make those decisions, for example, around how to allocate those marketing dollars. So data science being the second major area of responsibility. And the third is, you've heard me mention the word technology, is that as a group that tends to be extremely technology literate, that you really can't do your job without having technology. We will find ourselves very frequently either being the primary business owner for technologies, for example, Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics as being solutions that are used in the digital space, or partnering with our IT and other business teams as companies introduce, or as we introduce new technologies in the organization, will take a leading role. So those three major areas: business analytics, data science, and then that sort of technology business owner, especially around analytics solutions. So those are the three major areas. And then the one other area that will frequently get added into it, and has been throughout my career, is the insight side of that as well. So developing insights from data, and then that may extend even into areas like market research. So that's a pretty good summary then. It's Chief Analytics Officer, but implicit in that is the insights piece as sort of a final component, but that's discrete from the analytics itself.
Okay, that's great. I mean, thank you for the description. Do you think that this is only for the big players, or is it also possible, talking about e-commerce now, for a small e-commerce brand, I don't know, 7-figure e-commerce brand?
Yeah.
Is there enough data to leverage?
I think in general, everyone almost always has enough data. You really don't run into a situation these days where you don't have enough data. I think the important question is that point of, whatever your size is, how do you take advantage of the technologies that are out there? And actually, I think one of the really differentials of today versus 10 years ago is that the average cost of those technologies are in a very different place. And so you could be an early stage startup business, consumer facing, and go out there and be able to access technologies that help improve your marketing, that help improve how you're managing your e-commerce inventory, or in our case, help you improve the value of your ad inventory on your websites if you're a digital media publisher like we are here at Publishers Clearinghouse. Those tools are out there, so you can take advantage of them really almost regardless of the size. There's for every business, there's a level of prioritization, there's an availability of resources, but the technology is absolutely there to be able to take advantage of it. And so you'll also then see even small companies, especially newer companies, actually building out at least starting with even small analytics teams to take advantage of what you can do now versus where you could do a decade ago.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, from experience working with clients in the e-commerce space, I see data is fragmented across, platforms and many places, and it's really hard to, everyone is talking about, attribution or the user journey getting more complex to understand. And how can brands avoid getting lost, in that, complex situation, multiple platforms to analyze the data from? How can they go about it? What brands can do about it?
Yeah, so at one level, you can be overwhelmed, I think, by the complexity. However, the advantage you have now is that many of the base solutions that are in the marketplace themselves have a bit of capability. If you're selling in e-commerce, the e-commerce platforms that you're almost certainly utilizing will have its own set of base solutions that you can use that will keep you more than busy enough for a very long time utilizing what is in there. Similarly, in the marketing space, if you look at the base marketing cloud solutions, scaled up to some of the largest e-commerce companies or even retailers that have e-commerce, down to even the startups and some of the commerce clouds that are out there. They'll have those type of solutions. So those tools are there. And then you look at what you can do in terms of platforms like Facebook and Amazon and Google, and there's the solutions there. So right from the start, you have the ability to be able to start to use them. And then it's a combination of having business users who have data literacy, who know how to access the solutions that are there, and then augmenting them in a very focused way with the analytic talent. And at some level, that's the scaling model from you're a 20-person organization up to, you have hundreds of thousands of employees. You're still working at some level, that model of taking advantage of what's in there and then looking at each of the incremental business opportunities that you can tap into.
Yeah. And I'm trying to put myself in, somebody listening, they are, I don't know, e-commerce directors, marketing directors working for e-commerce brands, or even founders, and they might be wondering, how do is there any way, of getting the to measure things properly? Is there a framework? Is there anything that they should look at? Any levers, pillars, or anything else that you can, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, if you take e-commerce in particular, I think there are two potentially, actually three lenses. Most people end up focusing on the first two. So first is around the efficacy of what you're doing from a marketing standpoint. And in that case, there's the bottoms up set of tools that you have. You mentioned attribution is one. But I actually think it's pretty important that you approach things actually with a framework that says there are three really pillars to it. One is the financial. What is the attribution? I spend this, I spend X, I get Y. I think that's very important. And as an analytics person, that's not surprising. But I would also argue that understanding also how your spend impacts your brand equity, and then how your spend impacts just consumer engagement as well. So it's not just one single focus on financial metric. It's really that portfolio of financial performance, brand equity, and consumer engagement. And depending on where you are as a company, what your goals are, understanding how to balance that spend out, especially smaller companies. What I've observed is they tended to focus a lot on things like cost of acquisition, return on ad spend, very financial, and that makes a lot of sense. But what you'll also find is that you very quickly start to get diminishing returns. And so by having a more holistic view of it and investing in a sense in things like brand building, where you have very explicit KPIs and you're measuring your performance against those KPIs, but they don't necessarily immediately translate into a dollar. So it's a bit ironic that the analytics person is saying, hey, you might have some non-financial KPIs, but I think that's fairly important. So those type of solutions out there are there. What I would say before I move on to the second one is you're not going to find a perfect solution, especially these days. I mean, you've got the many of the major platforms are limiting the amount of data that goes in and out of their platforms, more about what comes out than goes in. And so you're not going to have a perfect answer, but you should still have sufficient amount of data available for you to be able to optimize with what you are spending. So that's a huge domain. And again, that's your marketing team, a very focused analytics team can really be transformative just focusing in on that. The second major.
No, sorry, I just wanted to say something before you move on to the next one, because I think this is pretty interesting what you're saying. And you mentioned cost per acquisition, ROAS, or return on the ad spend, and those are great, but they don't show the full picture, as you said, right? So companies probably don't focus on, I don't know, what's your take on, measuring lifetime value versus cost of customer acquisition, and not CPA, cost of purchase versus ROAS. I think they missed the rest of the picture of the other levers of, increasing the AOV, reducing the time between purchases on the back end. I think they only evaluate success based on what they can see on the platform for the first purchase, right? But they don't see the full picture. right?
Yeah. So completely agree. And I will say, I think especially smaller, what you do see these days is that more sort of growth oriented set of KPIs versus a full end life cycle set of KPIs. Whatever your KPIs are, you got to work backwards from what your overall strategic goals are. I take LTV as an example. It was something I spent early in my career a lot of time on. Have become less of an emphasis on it in recent years, principally because as I'll joke is it's rare a financial report that says, hey, I lost money this year, but in 2 years I'll make it back. I guess if you have unlimited investment funding, that's an okay idea. And there's a lot of people really rich, based on that idea. But I think you got to understand what the balance it is. It's also, I think, really tricky actually for a lot of companies to actually have a real sense of what that looks like. Especially when you start to get into more of your fixed cost allocation and how you allocate the value of an initial purchase, and then augment that with a purchase, 6 months from now that may or may not happen, that has some probability associated with. So the complexities of some of these more of KPIs can get very challenging. And so they can be good, but you definitely have to sort of take them into consideration. So at the end of the day, it gets back to the need to align the KPIs, whatever those are, to whatever the overall strategic agenda would be. And then expanding it, things like the brand equity, which tends to not be on those lists. But I do think, especially for smaller companies, if you're always competing for every transaction as a transactional interaction, you will find it's almost cost prohibitive these days to try to compete with everyone else on the internet when you don't have that brand equity. So that's kind of why I was bringing that up, is it doesn't naturally fall into some of the KPIs that you mentioned.
Great. Yeah, in fact, I read a report made by the coach at the Commerce Fuel. I don't remember the last name, Andrew. My apologies if you're listening, but it's a great report comparing, I think it was 2019 to 2022. They surveyed, I don't know, over 600 e-commerce, plus they partner up with PostScript and other tools to provide them with data. And one of the major factors that helped the top performing brands was branding, not even the ROAS, or it was the branding factor. So it's pretty in line with what you're saying.
Yeah. And the other extension is, and this is the second thing is this whole area around analytics in the area of commerce and product. I always think one of the disappointing things around analytics as it applies to retail in particular is almost everyone naturally goes to marketing side. In fact, a lot of analytics functions actually, are born and exist within the marketing function. And you get a lot of benefit there, but actually the areas of product, merchandising, assortment, visual merchandising online, pricing, all of that can be benefited by bringing analytical solutions to the table. By the way, the third area is on the supply chain. So all three, so marketing, product, supply chain, all can benefit. Where the second and third play into it gets back to the first thing, which is, well, what's your definition of LTV? What's your different profitability? Well, selling something at a 25% discount, you might get the conversion, but you're selling below what's going to be a long-term acceptable margin rate. So actually starting a lot of this and focusing on the merchandising side, which is harder, can actually have more of a financial benefit than a lot of the effort that's put on the marketing side. So I think companies looking at this at a minimum, e-commerce in particular, really want to make sure they're striking the right balance of how much resources they're allocating to both of those. Because the natural tendency will be the marketers will gravitate more, especially digital marketers will gravitate more towards the analytics functions, even the more advanced ML AI type of stuff than you might find on the merchandising, product, inventory management, planning side of things, but the benefits may even actually be higher over there. So that's the second place where I think you can find a lot of benefit as a retailer and e-commerce company, understanding and improving what you're doing on that side of the business.
Awesome. So I know I interrupted you when you were mentioning the three of them, Is there any of those missing, or you mentioned the three, the
Yeah. So it's really it's in most simplistic level. It's the marketing, it's the product merchandising side of things, and then there's supply chain. If you're doing physical retailing, throw in the physical store, and you pretty much got your four quadrants relative to direct business opportunities as it relates to analytics. I have this framework that I share with people that has probably 50, 75 explicit, discrete opportunity areas for retailing as it relates to analytics. And so each one of those can be its own business case, where you make the investments, whether it's in a tool, whether it's in people, whether it's just in the process, that can pay back. So it's a target-rich environment to be able to apply the analytics. And the beauty about it is the venture capital industry has been over investing in this space for a very long time now. And means you have a lot of choices. I say overinvest because there's more solutions than there's companies in some cases who would probably buy the technologies, or at least it seems to be a sort of a balanced weighting. And so you, as a consumer of these, you can just take advantage of it. It's great. It's like your kid in a candy store. You can pick those technologies, you can bring them into organizations, you can rapidly deploy them, and realize realize the profit opportunity against each one of those opportunities.
Okay. Out of curiosity, when you mentioned that, of course, I know that sometimes brands need to accept that not everything can be measured, or maybe you say, of course, that it's possible, but based on what you said before about branding, for example, how is it possible to avoid saying, this is like, I don't know, a black box. We don't see anything that's inside. It's like, okay, branding efforts there, or can you go deeper and measure a few things that are worth it for e-commerce brands?
Yeah. So if I said anything that would suggest that not measuring is a good idea, then that completely misspoke. What I was saying was what the KPI might be may not be a direct financial metric. I'll take so branding actually is a little bit more straightforward because historically people have attached KPIs to brand. Brand awareness, very classical brand awareness, brand consideration. What are the attributes about your brand? And there's the classical ways that you can get at it, and there's more modern ways, especially leveraging areas like social media and search as a source for those KPIs. The consumer engagement one, I always use this as my example for this one is, I may not run out and buy a Red Bull the minute I see this, but if I spend 5 minutes watching a video of someone jumping out of one plane into another, I inherently believe there's value to that brand for making that happen. I have a proclivity for watching some of these insane things that you see the Red Bull athletes. This probably also didn't help for that because I used to work at Under Armour, where we would celebrate athletes doing amazing things. And so that consumer engagement is also another area that says, okay, I'm not going to actually assign a value to that. However, I am going to assign KPIs and say my goal in investing is to move that KPI. So wherever the KPI is now, if I make the investment, I want it to go something else. It may be views, it may be shares, but whatever it is, it should be measurable. I think that's important, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, oh, and it's worth 0.523 cents, for every impression. You can do that. I usually think that's a high degree of false precision in doing it, but it's important to have the KPIs. They just don't need to necessarily be a one-to-one to a financial, the way you would if you're just looking at things like attribution, marketing mix optimizations, where everything sort of is assigned a utility. I think that misses out on some of the benefits of the more qualitative types of investments in marketing.
Do you think, talking about branding again, do you think that, I don't know, let's say small, medium brand listening, but they haven't, let's say they haven't actually developed their branding yet and they want to, should they allocate a small percentage, high percentage? Of course, they need to generate sales, but one will lead to the other. The thing is, many brands say, oh, but these will be long term. And maybe it's true, right? But would you say that brands should, bet seriously on that front, or they should go step by step, like 20% of the budget or small, let's
Yeah.
say?
I don't know. I would have a specific percentage number target. A non-answer is it will depend on what the company is. What I would though come at it from the other direction is to say is I know what it looks like when you don't have a brand. And I think, in your mind, if you're a company thinking about it, ask yourself, am I a label or am I a brand? A label is that company that you just bought something with, and a week later, you're like, you may even love the product, and you're like, I can't even remember who the brand is. So a brand has a degree of equity that goes beyond just the product. And the reason that's, I think, critical is because it provides a mechanism for you to break through. In a world in which even leading edge capabilities and products can be fairly readily replicated, even legally, sometimes a little bit more questionably, especially once you get outside the United States as it relates to intellectual property. So you have to sit there like, why go to me versus somewhere else? And certainly when you look at some of the retail exchanges, I mean, it's always hard to compete against, the lower price, which will not have it. So I think building that brand equity and then following through with it. It's not just your brand, it's your pricing strategy, it's how you show up, it's the other attributes, what's your influencer model, all of those things go into it. And I think those will be important, especially as you look to scale, because eventually, as you spend, you just start getting more and more diminishing returns. And having a strong brand is a way to be able to offset that competitive landscape that you're going to find yourself in.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. One of the last questions I have for you is around, regarding Google Analytics 4 and iOS 13. iOS 13 sounds like a old thing, but it's current at the same time. Did that affect data collection a lot for your people in your role, for example, or is it this? Oh,
Yeah. Well, I think that I'd step back and do this and saying is, in recent years, up until recent years, they say last 2 years, 3 years, the reality about it is that the capabilities of digital marketers have been increasing every year. You can do more sophistication in tools, more visibility into the efficacy of your marketing investments. And what started to happen somewhat under the umbrella of data privacy, somewhat under the umbrella of some of the large players were making unilateral decisions for various reasons. We're seeing an inversion of that. So what you can do this year is more than you're going to be able to do last year. And I feel tremendously for any marketer, digital marketer today, because it is the case. If you look at what has happened over the last 2 years, 3 years, what is expected to happen over the next 2-3 years, they are going to have less capabilities. They are going to be less effective than they otherwise would. And nothing, I think, better demonstrates that than if you look at what Apple did do in terms of their limitations on some of the device tracking. Again, totally reasonable, respect, giving consumers that choice about what to do. But the result is now, specifically on the the iPhone platform, marketers now know less than they used to. If you look at Google, you look at Facebook, marketers now have less abilities, especially around data, than they used to. With that less data means that you're less smart, you can do less. And so you just means that for a given amount of investment, you're going to get not as good a return. So it puts a real emphasis on getting, figuring out ways to make yourself smarter outside of what those restrictions are. It's not intended to be self-serving, but puts more burden on having better analytics capabilities. That's just going to be the reality that you're in. And so it's going to be, you've got a budget, your budget next year, you're going to be less effective than you are here. The other thing I would say on this, and it's related, is that, you've got, everyone is competing at some level against a scarce resource. I always think one of the things I find fascinating about digital in this context of what's changed is there is only so much high quality ad inventory that's out there. And so as people are competing, to reach consumers on these platforms, there's only so much there. Now, the nice thing that's going on right now is with the launch of the retail platforms, the Amazon, Walmart, IRI, et cetera, that's creating more ad inventory there, and actually very high ad quality inventory. You have the introduction of TikTok. So at some level, we're going to re-equilibrate the amount of ad inventory. That'll help. That'll bring down some of the costs. But at the same time, you got the cost pressures on the other side of it. So it's a very complex landscape that marketers now have to compete in, and just recognizing that there are going to be limitations that weren't in existence, even in the recent past.
Definitely, yeah. As an advertiser, I can tell you how hard it is and how hard probably last few months, especially the last quarter of last year, the first quarter this year, plus, supply chain issues, the war, and many other crazy stuff going on in the world, recession, crisis, blah, blah, right? But it's one of the factors was the increasing cost in advertising. And probably we need to go back to the basics when it comes to the targeting, because we kind of laser target the audience we want anymore. Even if we can, we're actually not doing that really, right?
Yeah.
To level up the marketing, the message, and for that we need to measure more. So I wanted to ask you next, to wrap up, what do you think, if you know the answer, of course, that the most underrated reports in an e-commerce, let's say I take a look at Shopify, where I have a CRM. What do you think that most brands are not looking at that is there, served for them? I don't know if basket analysis, customer return rate, or anything else that you say. Typically, when I work with people, they are not looking at these important stats. They're focusing on sales only, right? I don't know if you know any of those. Yeah,
I would say, and I fell into this, is shifting more of that attention to the performance of the product. What is common is you'll talk about the marketing dollars, you'll talk about the segments and targeting, and spend almost no time on, but what am I putting in front of them? And so the two pieces, one is the product itself. What's the profitability of the product? How do I get to trade them in? Is there upsell opportunities? What's the right, if you are going to look at promotions, and promotions are usually, even for companies with, minimum price advertising pricing sort of models, they still will be some level of promotional in certain points. How do you really get to optimize? The other piece of this is, and it's kind of the intersection of the product and the marketing, is content. We haven't really spent a lot of time getting into that. But that's a whole dimension that I think is just completely lost. It's people spend hours discussing targeting and segments, and then very little about, well, what's the content that I'm going to put in there? What's the construct of the ad? How many degrees of permutation? How do I attribute it? How do I do the analysis on it? And then how do I make sure I'm putting the right message in? They'll say put the right message in front of the right consumer, spend all their time talking about the consumer. So the right message starts to get into what's the right product, what's the right overall message that goes and content that goes around it. And this also then starts to play into, and you hit on it, around the challenge on the marketing side, is the more you can move away from just simply a transactional message allows you to start to think about influencers and social and user generated content as means to get some of that traffic on a more organic basis. But if you don't have the content, you're not there. And I think one of the bigger challenges, especially if you want a more of a relationship model, is you got to keep the content going. It's not a one-time thing, it's an ongoing thing. And understanding and using analytics in that content and in the product are absolutely the case. So looking at those standard reports that come out of these platforms about what's there, taking advantage of, I don't know all of them, but so many of these platforms now have some level of base machine learning, AI, optimizations that get you beyond what you're doing, and just getting started with something as simple as very aggressive A/B testing will go a very long way, because even that alone is going to take a lot of capacity. If you're testing lots of different things, even before the algorithms get applied at some level, that will get you very, very far in being able to be the smarter person. I always think in the digital space, the smarter person is going to win. You're competing not against others just in your categories. You're competing everyone else who wants the attention of that person that is your computer consumer, or is a prospect that you want to be a consumer. And you got to be smarter, because if not, every time you win that consumer, you may actually have lost because you paid more, or you got a less valuable customer than you would have had if you had the right insights, if you had the right information, and you're able to act on a smarter basis.
Yeah, you definitely hit that point, because we actually tell our clients that they need to work on 4 fronts, at least, the message, the avatar, the audience, the funnel, and the value ladder. They're mainly the offer, not only in the front end, but on the back end too. And sometimes do some non-scalable things to then achieve, the level of scalability that they are looking for, to try to figure out what's wrong. I even interview Tony, I don't remember the last name, but she was a speaker at the first At Work conference this year, and she was sharing with the audience the here and on At Work, the framework she uses for doing learning more about the insights on the avatars by doing focus groups, with the lovers, the haters, and the some in the middle, right? To actually find out some insights that sometimes you cannot anticipate, and unless you ask. Some other people I interviewed, they do, for example, I don't know, post-purchase surveys to know where people are coming from, or some other thing about them. So it's really important to take a look at data, and also to listen to your customers, listen what they want, keep them in the loop, build a community, many things. We even discussed that with Miriam, building a community, the importance, in her case, in United, to build a community of parents, around the topic, and the support. So yeah, it's a pretty hot thing right now to do. And what you said about, paid ads and all the rest of the actions, we have had it easy as marketers and brands for many years by spending some ad dollars and getting a return on that. Even drop shipping brands and many others with no branding and nothing behind, no effort, but the ad dollars they spent. And right now they need to level up the loyalty. And we discussed in a previous episode, like, what's loyalty? Most e-commerce brands didn't have that in their vocabulary, like, I don't know, 6 months ago. The customer retention is like, okay, I get customers, I measure the ROAS, and now they need to level up. But yeah, it's a complex thing we're living in.
The thing I'd add on top of what you just said is there's this dynamic I observe in especially in recent years, where all of the investment dollars are chasing, is everyone will use some version of a product company, like, and a tech and product in a tech sort of thing, because that's the cool thing. So you have no disrespect to chief product officers, but your chief product officers, even when you're selling something. And what I think gets lost in this, but e-commerce companies have been able to sort of, not have to address, is what it takes to build that relationship. And so, one example of that is, affiliate marketing is an awesome source of traffic for e-commerce companies. What you realize, though, for all intents and purposes, is you've outsourced your relationship building. So they're going to whatever that other site is. They're engaging with content. They're responding, they're responding to outreach. They're participating in that. Oh, and then you're paying to sort of hijack them for that commerce relationship. That's back into the, okay, but then are you a brand or you're a label? And for me, some of the companies that I really stand out for me are the companies who make that extra step to, everyone does affiliate marketing, but they go the extra step for, hey, let me give a reason for them to come back. You've made the purchase, but you're interested in how to use the product, or you're interested in sharing with a community of people who use the product, or you're interested in giving feedback on it, or you just like the domain space and you like to read articles about it. I love to cook. There's some brands that especially on the startup side, who don't have a lot of resources, who you can tell go through that extra effort of making that investment in the content. And therefore, importantly, means that I don't actually tell them to unsubscribe me, because that's usually what happens to labels. They buy the product, they get about 2 weeks of emails, and then you unsubscribe, and then you're in the black hole again and have to reacquire. So that's where that content piece, especially in e-commerce, I think is part of that overall strategy. Back to the original point, also around having the right KPIs about how to make sure you're investing and getting the right return against those KPIs.
Yeah. So correct me if I'm wrong, but basically what you're saying is that you might not own all the acquisition channels, but you should own the retention channels, the communication, and the engagement with the customer once they made the first purchase, right?
Yeah, but I go further is understanding what that actually takes. And I think that's the part. Here's what I've observed. People don't actually want to make the investment. Like it's not appealing to a CFO. It's like, hey, I'm investing in content. Well, how many sales do I get from that content posting? Oh, I don't get a lot of click through because they just bought. So it is that you need to own that one, but taking it the step further and going, how do I invest to become a brand, not just a label? And then I would say one of the critical components of that is having the quote content that people are going to be interested. I mean, the easiest thing I can give an example is, if they're going to have a relationship with you, that means they actually interact with you, you interact with them. And it needs to be more than, hey, this week my promotion is 20% off. Next week it's, buy one, get one. Hey, the week after that, it's the 18% off plus free shipping promotion. Like that's what most people sort of in e-commerce in particular seem to think what content is. And I'm getting is like, how do you romance the product? How do you talk about the use of the product or whatever that might be, and making that part of your investment. And that's another place, again, where analytics can help you make sure you're making the right investments and not just creating content for the sake of creating content.
Yeah, I can keep going for hours, but we need to wrap up. So
Sure.
I would really do like part 2, part 3. I mean, there are a lot of things that I would love to ask you, but I come from a tech background too, and not probably a data scientist, but I was a developer for many years, and have a degree in computer science. So I'm like all about data analysis, not at that level, right? But I love to, going beyond the typical marketer of saying, hey, the cost of acquisition. And so I can keep going for hours, but it was really, really insightful. I mean, the conversation was really great. I really enjoyed all the tips that you shared and the thoughts that you shared. I learned a lot, and I hope the audience did too. So yeah, please tell me, where can people go to learn more about you and the company?
So for Publishers Clearinghouse, we're a US based company. Just that's the only thing. What I always tell people is, our value proposition to consumers is we give money away. We give large sweepstakes. I think that's what most people know us about. We have apps, websites, mobile games, etc., for entertainment and all of those give you those chance to win it as well. So if there's an ask on mine, check us out. We find the people who use our stuff really like the products, and we do give the money away every week, every month. We give people the opportunity to win prizes. So check us out, publishersclearinghouse.com.
Awesome. And is there anywhere that they can find you online? Maybe LinkedIn or somewhere else?
Oh, me. Oh, yes. I'm I'm on LinkedIn. So that's probably the easiest way to find me. If you search my name, I think I'm the usually one of the top ones to come up. And as far as I'm aware, I'm the only Kirk Kendall who does data and analytics at this point. So there may be someone else. I fortunately, that's one of the other advantages is if you started early, you build up, and once you're at the top of the rankings, you get to usually stay there. So that's usually a way to find me online as well.
That's pretty cool. And also for everyone listening, remember that you can find everything mentioned here in this conversation in the show notes, whether it's in fitgrowthmachine.com or if you're listening to the audio version on Apple Podcasts, you will find that there as well. So it was a pleasure again, Kurt. Thanks for being here on the show.
Thank you very much, Brian.